Commander Vexona Cawthon strode into the human research facility with her characteristic military precision, her iridescent scales shifting through shades of deep blue and violet as sunlight caught their edges. As the youngest battle commander in the Zoridi fleet, she had been selected to represent her people in this technology exchange program, a fact she reminded herself of as she suppressed her instinctive distaste for the sterile, blandly functional human architecture. "Commander, welcome to Adaptive Systems Lab," Captain Dominic Ellis approached with an extended hand, a human greeting ritual she had been briefed on. "We're honored to have a Zoriti officer of your standing visit our humble facility." Vexona's translator implant caught the subtle irony in his tone, but she ignored it, clasping his hand briefly with her six-fingered grip. "Captain, I am instructed to evaluate your exoskeleton technology for potential military applications." "Of course." Ellis smiled, the expression crinkling the corners of his hazel eyes. "Though we prefer adaptive neural interface suit rather than exoskeleton. It's designed to enhance rather than replace the wearer's natural abilities." He led her through a series of laboratories where humans in white garments tapped at primitive data interfaces. Vexona maintained her rigid posture, antenna held perfectly still to indicate professional attentiveness, though privately she found little impressive about what she'd seen so far. "And here we are at the testing chamber." Ellis gestured to a large room with reinforced walls. At its center stood what appeared to be a sleek, segmented bodysuit made of matte black material with faint blue circuitry patterns glowing beneath the surface. "This is your advanced technology?" Vexona couldn't keep the dismissive tone from her voice. "It appears primitive." Ellis seemed unperturbed. "Appearances can be deceiving, Commander. The Nexus 7 contains over 15 million neural connection points and can amplify strength by 300% while maintaining complete freedom of movement. My species already possesses natural strength superior to humans," she noted, circling the suit with analytical eyes. "Though I suppose for your kind, such assistance would be necessary." To her mild irritation, Ellis chuckled. "Perhaps a demonstration would be more convincing than technical specifications? Would you care to try it on?" Vexona hesitated. Direct interface with human technology wasn't explicitly part of her mission parameters, but bringing back first-hand experience would certainly elevate her report. "Very well," she agreed, her crest flaring slightly with interest despite herself. Ellis nodded, approaching a console. "Excellent. But first, some safety protocols. I have mastered 17 forms of powered armor from 7 different star systems." "Captain," Vexona interrupted, "I doubt your device presents any challenge beyond my expertise." Ellis paused, his expression flickering between amusement and concern. "With respect, Commander, this isn't like other systems. The neural interface requires calibration to prevent feedback loops, especially for non-human neurophysiology." "Proceed with the demonstration," she insisted, her crest fully extended now, a sign of impatience in her species that the human likely couldn't interpret. Ellis sighed. "As you wish. But please follow my instructions carefully." The suit opened along invisible seams, and Vexona stepped into it with practiced ease. The material felt cool against her scales as it sealed around her body, surprisingly comfortable as it adjusted to her non-human form. "Now, remain still while the system calibrates to your neural patterns," Ellis instructed, monitoring readings on his console. "And whatever you do, don't engage your combat reflexes until—" But Vexona, eager to test the suit's capabilities, had already shifted into her species' primary battle stance, her muscles tensing in the precise pattern that would normally trigger her natural defensive exoskeleton. The suit immediately responded, not with the smooth amplification she expected, but with a sudden, complete lockdown. Every joint froze in place, leaving her immobilized in an awkward half-crouched position. "What is happening?" she demanded, struggling against the now rigid material. "That," Ellis said with remarkable calm, "is exactly what I was about to warn you about." The system detected a stress pattern it interpreted as combat preparation and activated emergency protection protocols. He approached, studying the locked suit with professional interest. "And now we have a problem. Disengage it immediately," Vexona ordered, her antenna quivering with the first stirrings of alarm. Ellis crossed his arms. "I'm afraid I can't do that remotely. The emergency override requires manual access to the controls located." He paused, looking at her frozen position, "right in the middle of your back, which you currently can't reach, and I can't access without your cooperation." Vexona's scales darkened with humiliation as the reality of her situation became clear. She, a Zorati commander, was trapped in a human device because she had ignored basic safety instructions. "I require your assistance, Captain," she finally admitted, her voice taut with wounded pride. Ellis nodded, his expression softening. "Of course, Commander. That's why I'm here." "This will require some physical proximity," Captain Ellis explained, his professional tone doing little to diminish Vexona's mortification. "I need to access the manual override located between your shoulder blades." Vexona's scales shifted to a dull gray, the Zorati equivalent of a blush. "Proceed as necessary, Captain. My diplomatic immunity prevents me from causing you harm for this." Indignity. Ellis raised an eyebrow. "Threatening the person trying to help you isn't customary among humans, Commander." "It was not a threat," she clarified stiffly. "It was reassurance." Ellis fought back a smile as he circled her frozen form, assessing the situation. "I'm going to have to stand very close to reach the panel. Your physiology is more elongated than our test subjects. Just get on with it." Each word emerged from Vexona's mandibles with precise, controlled frustration. Ellis stepped behind her, close enough that she could sense his body heat, a peculiar sensation through the suit's neural interfaces. Humans ran warmer than Zorati, and the proximity sent unexpected signals through her nervous system. "Easy now," he murmured, his voice closer to her auditory receptors than she had anticipated. "I need to locate the seam first." His fingers traced a line down her spine, searching for the hidden access panel. The neural interface transmitted every touch with heightened sensitivity, causing Vexona's breath to catch unexpectedly. "Did I hurt you?" Ellis asked, immediately pausing. "No," she responded too quickly. "The sensation was merely unanticipated. The neural feedback must be calibrated for human nerve endings," he explained, resuming his careful exploration. "For you, it might be amplifying tactile input beyond comfortable levels." His fingers found the nearly invisible seam and pressed a specific sequence. A small panel slid open, revealing a complex arrangement of controls embedded in the suit structure. "Now for the tricky part," Ellis said, his breath warm against her neck scales. "I need to bypass the emergency protocol without triggering a secondary lockdown." Vexona remained silent, suddenly aware of how rarely anyone approached this close to her. On her world, such proximity was reserved for combat training or intimate relations with chosen partners. This situation fit neither category, yet stirred something unnamed within her. Ellis worked methodically, occasionally asking her to attempt small movements to test his progress. Each time his fingers adjusted something, small pulses of electrical feedback rippled through the suit, creating strange sensations along her scales. "Your heart rate is elevated," he noted, glancing at a readout on his wrist device. "Are you in distress?" "Zordi do not experience distress," she replied automatically. "It is merely biological response to confinement." Ellis hummed noncommittally, close enough that she could detect the subtle scent of him, something herbal and unfamiliar. "Almost there. When I release the final lock, you'll feel a sensation like a wave passing through the suit. Don't resist it." "I'm not in the habit of resisting waves, Captain," she said dryly. Ellis chuckled, the sound unexpectedly pleasant. "Fair enough, Commander." His fingers made one final adjustment, and true to his word, a rippling sensation cascaded from her shoulders down to her feet. The suit's rigid segments softened gradually, returning flexibility to her limbs. As mobility returned, Vexona found herself slightly unsteady, her balance temporarily compromised. Ellis's hands instinctively moved to stabilize her, catching her by the upper arms. The contact, direct skin against the now responsive suit material, sent another jolt through her nervous system. Their eyes met, his hazel gaze steady as he ensured she was stable. Something unspoken passed between them in that moment, a recognition, perhaps, that transcended their different biologies. "Thank you," she said, the words feeling strange and inadequate. Ellis stepped back, restoring professional distance. "You're welcome. Now we should properly remove the suit before." "No," Vexona interrupted, flexing her limbs experimentally. "I wish to continue the test." Ellis blinked in surprise. "After what just happened?" "A warrior learns from failure, not retreat," she stated, her antennae straightening with renewed determination. "Now that I understand the system's limitations, I can adapt accordingly." Ellis studied her for a moment, then nodded slowly. "All right, Commander." But this time, we do it my way, with proper calibration and safety protocols. Agreed, she conceded, surprising both of them with her ready acquiescence. For the next hour, Ellis guided her through the proper initialization sequences, explaining each system and its purpose. Vexona found herself impressed despite her initial skepticism. The human technology, while different from her own species' approach, showed remarkable ingenuity. More surprising was her growing appreciation for Ellis himself. His expertise was evident, but it was his patience and lack of condescension that truly caught her attention. He treated her not as an alien curiosity but as a respected colleague. When the session finally ended and the suit was properly removed, Vexona found herself reluctant to conclude their interaction. Perhaps, she suggested, her voice carefully neutral, additional sessions would be beneficial for my full assessment report. Ellis smiled, a genuine expression that transformed his face. I'd be happy to arrange that, Commander. Same time tomorrow. As she left the facility, Vexona realized her mission had just become considerably more complex and infinitely more interesting than she had anticipated. Over the following weeks, what had begun as formal technology evaluation sessions evolved into something neither Vexona nor Ellis had anticipated. Their meetings extended beyond the testing chamber into long discussions in the facility's observation deck, where Earth's horizon curved against the blackness of space. Your combat techniques are fascinating, Ellis commented, reviewing footage of Vexona demonstrating Zorati martial forms while wearing the modified suit. The movements seem almost ceremonial. Because they are, Vexona explained, her scale shifting to a thoughtful azure hue. Each sequence honors ancestors who perfected these techniques through centuries of combat evolution. Form and function are inseparable in Zorati culture. Ellis nodded, making notes on his tablet. That explains why the suit initially misinterpreted your movements. It was reading ritual as combat intent. A reasonable error, Vexona conceded, surprising herself with her lenience. 3 weeks ago, she would have considered such a misinterpretation an unforgivable design flaw. They sat across from each other at a small table, the remnants of a shared meal between them, another new development. Vexona had initially been reluctant to partake in human sustenance, but Ellis had specially sourced compatible nutrients that her system could process. May I ask you something of a personal nature? Ellis ventured, setting aside his work. Vexona's antennae twitched with interest. You may ask. I may choose not to answer. Fair enough, he smiled. I've noticed your scales change color frequently during our sessions. Is that a voluntary response, or automatic like human blushing? Vexona unconsciously straightened her posture. It is complex. Some color changes are involuntary expressions of physiological state, while others can be controlled with training. Zorati warriors undergo extensive discipline to master such control. And yet, Ellis observed carefully, your scales shift to violet whenever we discuss theoretical applications rather than practical demonstrations. Her scales immediately flushed to the exact shade of violet he had mentioned, betraying her surprise at his observation. You are more perceptive than most humans I have encountered. I pay attention to things that interest me, he said simply, his gaze steady. The statement hung between them, laden with implications neither was prepared to address directly. Vexona found herself experiencing a peculiar sensation in her thoracic cavity, something akin to the gravitational adjustment when entering a planet's atmosphere after long space travel. Your species values directness, she noted, deflecting the moment. Mine prefers the space between words. Ellis leaned back, accepting her redirection. Speaking of space between, I've been authorized to show you something beyond the standard exchange protocol. Would you be interested? Her antennae perked forward with unmistakable curiosity. I would. Ellis led her through a series of security checkpoints to a laboratory she hadn't previously been granted access to. Inside, a version of the neural suit unlike any she'd seen before hung suspended in a clear chamber. This is the Nexus 9 prototype, Ellis explained, his professional excitement evident. It incorporates some of the adaptations we've made based on your feedback. The neural mapping is completely redesigned to accommodate non-human neurophysiology. Vexona approached the chamber, genuinely impressed. You implemented my suggestions about ritual movement patterns. And your criticisms about the emergency protocols, Ellis added. The new system distinguishes between combat preparation and ceremonial forms through contextual analysis rather than simple muscle tension readings. She turned to him, her scale shifting to a deep emerald, a color he hadn't seen from her before. This is unexpected, Captain. Sharing advanced prototypes exceeds standard protocol. Dominic, he said quietly. Pardon. When we're not in official sessions, you could call me Dominic, he clarified, a slight coloration appearing along his neck, human blushing, she recognized. Vexona considered this breach of formality. Among her people, the use of personal designations rather than rank indicated intimate familiarity, typically reserved for family units or bonded pairs. That would be inappropriate, she began, then paused, reconsidering. However, I am here to study human customs. If this is standard practice among colleagues. Ellis, Dominic smiled. It can be, yes. Among colleagues who work closely together. Very well. Dominic. She tested the name, finding the sound pleasant against her speech apparatus. You may address me as Vexona in similar contexts. His smile widened, creating those peculiar creases near his eyes that she had begun to find inexplicably appealing. I'm honored, Vexona. She turned back to the prototype, using the moment to regain her composure. This adaptation shows considerable understanding of Zorati physiology. You have been thorough in your research. I had an excellent subject to study, he replied, then quickly added, professionally speaking, of course. Of course, she echoed, though something in his tone suggested otherwise. As they continued discussing the technical specifications, Vexona became increasingly aware of a shift in their dynamic, subtle but undeniable. What had begun as reluctant cooperation had evolved into mutual respect, and now seemed to be transforming into something her diplomatic briefings had never prepared her for. When their session concluded, Dominic walked her to the transport bay as had become their custom. Tomorrow's demonstration for the Joint Military Committee will be our last official session, he noted as they reached the airlock doorway. Vexona felt an unexpected sense of loss at this statement. My mission parameters were fulfilled more efficiently than anticipated. Efficient? Yes, Dominic agreed, then hesitated before adding, but I find myself wishing efficiency wasn't always the priority. Before she could formulate a proper response, her communication device signaled an incoming priority message from the Zorati embassy. I must attend to this, she said, grateful for the interruption, yet simultaneously frustrated by it. Until tomorrow then, Dominic replied with a respectful nod. As she boarded her transport, Vexona realized that for the first time in her distinguished military career, she was experiencing genuine reluctance about a mission's completion and uncertainty about what would follow.